The authors of the book, and in less than 8 months, we have such a intense, detailed books being launched. I think it speaks volumes about the hard work and and also the accelerated speed that the book was being written. Because I know what a book writing means, or even if it's like an edited book, what it means. It's a very difficult task to do it in such a less span of time. So my congratulations to all of you, sir. The book is an outstanding effort, a very timely, comprehensive, fact-based studies that dissects the patterns of Pakistan's proxy war, substantiates it with ample data. I think that is something I found very fascinating in the book. It takes you to a chilling journey of Pahalgam attack and also multi-pronged nuances of Operation Sindoor. It provides an in-depth assessment of India's resolve, military preparedness to respond to Pakistan's acts of terror, and also gives you an insight how we will handle future conflicts. Now talking about the Pahalgam attack, the book builds a very good base in its initial part, talking about Pakistan's strategy of terror. But just for a moment, let's go back and look into it, what was happening in Pakistan before the Pahalgam attack, the pre-Pahalgam scenario. And I think that's very critical, because that gives you an insight about why Pakistan will not change and why it will continue to do this, and why our strong deterrence is needed, and why our policy needs to keep evolving. Before Pahalgam, Pakistan was undergoing a multi-dimensional crisis. Internally, economy was in shambles, inflation was 30% high, they were struggling very high with the IMF to get the loan, energy prices were high, which were meeting the IMF conditionalities. Politically, there was a turmoil because the most popular leader, Imran Khan, was asserting himself. Even though he was behind bars, he was continued to make noises there, issuing statements against the military. His popularity was not kind of dying down in any form. So I think three dimensions were extremely critical, which played a role in Pakistan's, this whole planning and strategy against India. I think, and the first very important part was that the military's image was tarnished quite badly in that period, what we saw. And never before in Pakistan we have seen military stature suffering this kind of a dent. Imran Khan calling the army chief traitor and Mir Jafar, something was totally unheard in Pakistan. So military really had that need to revive its image. And secondly, Pakistan's strategic relevance had declined to kind of, after the US exit from Afghanistan, which it really wanted to revive. And very importantly, situation in Kashmir was getting normal, with a number of tourists going up and the local business flourishing. So all these in their own mind had to be, addressed. And in this backdrop, the Pahalgam attack happened, and just before the attack, we had, Asim Munir's speech on 15th of April, which has been discussed in the book in great detail. And with India's Operation Sindoor, Pakistan's military capability, its nuclear doctrine, its perception regarding India's restraint was challenged. And three important, developments were very critical here. One was obviously Pakistan gave the credit for the ceasefire to President Trump, nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. It drove the narrative of military victory, not only the military victory, but strategic diplomatic victory. And simultaneously, it also drove the narrative of victimhood. And then what we saw that, obviously it had the advantage of a first lie after the ceasefire. It built this narrative and also managed to swing reasonable dividends in its favor after that narrative. Now, surprisingly, the narrative of victory, the military victory by Pakistan, was built around only what happened on May 7th, where it kind of, talked about potential loss of Indian jets. And Pakistan has not talked at all about what happened on May 8th, 9th, or for that matter 10th morning. And it has been on a mission of chest thumping victory, which has obviously, as I said, brought up dividends. So the book actually dissects the operation fully, gives critical factual details of the operation and the losses of which Pakistan suffered on 8th, 9th, 10th, and India's military superiority. The book is exceptional and distinct in many ways. It's very tough for me to, actually talk about it in this little time, but I have 5 points here which just to share with you, which I feel the book has done an incredible service. I think the initial part of the book covers the evolution of Pakistan's covert war strategy very well, and it also covers the evolution of India's response. I think what it talks about, really the threads that it brings out, is about the genesis of Pakistan's strategy, which in a way also tell you what are the trends which are irreversible in Pakistan. And when we talk about, and make statements that can Pakistan change, it will make you think that it's just impossible for the country to change. For example, it talks about Bhutto's speech in the UN, 100-year war, and multiple other aspects. It also talks about and gives a detailed, data on how the proxy war has manifested in a series of planned attacks, often coinciding with significant diplomatic events to maximize international attention. So those details are definitely important. It gives secondly, it gives a chronology of Pakistan-sponsored acts in Kashmir very beautifully. It talks about the objectives of Pakistan, seeking international attention, and that also makes you think that, why Pakistan uses the first use nuclear doctrine, highlights the nuclear threat each time there is a crisis with India, because it is about attracting international attention. So I think all these aspects come out very beautifully in the book. So I think the linkages the book draws on how Pakistan has been using this strategy of against India, a strategy of terrorism against India, fulfilling multiple objectives internally and externally, is an excellent aspect of the book. Thirdly, the book talks about the new normal, as the title suggests, and it actually formalizes the concept of dynamic response doctrine, which moves beyond the traditional conventional response to a more collaborated, multi-domain escalation dominance response. Fourthly, unlike many other military accounts that focus solely on ground operations or maybe one aspect of the operation, the book integrates perspectives from land, air, sea, diplomatic and cyber domain, and I think that's absolutely beautiful here. And lastly, I think the book provides an extremely engaging and mind-blowing account of 88-hour conflict. It details the transition from targeting terror infrastructure to striking Pakistan's military targets, to kind of then bringing Pakistan, making it completely desperate, asking for the ceasefire. And what is also commendable about the book is that it has used extensive data. I think that makes it very scholar-friendly, and as I am a scholar, I would always look for authentic data. It uses extensive data from very credible and open sources. So that's again, I think, sir, has been a very credible part of the book. So I wish the book all the best. I wish also, sir, that you pursue the translation of the book into multiple Indian languages and foreign languages. I think the world needs to read this version, and it gets publicity. I'll stop here with my remarks, and I will now kind of turn towards the authors here for their comments. And sir, I have 15 minutes, so 5 minutes for each of you, so I would just request you to kind of adhere to that. So starting with you, General Bakshi, you have covered a wide spectrum in terms of the multidimensional, and you should start with him? Okay, I'll start with him. Okay, I'll start with the diplomatic front, and how this was a total diplomatic, how we see it as a diplomatic shift. Ambassador Trignac has talked about it, that it is a reflection of significant India's diplomatic response, a shift in India's diplomatic response. Sir, you said that given in the last part of your book, that given the lukewarm response that we saw at the global level after the Pahalgam attack, and specifically after the operation. After the Pahalgam attack, we still had some sympathy wave coming, but after the operation, the response was different. And you very nicely you talked about it that India decided to follow Ekla Chalo Walk Alone policy as far as fight for terrorism is concerned. My question is, sir, that since terrorism doesn't have borders, how do you see this policy going ahead? The world is interconnected. We have growing challenge of terrorism in South Asia specifically, with Afghanistan and extremism that we are facing here. How do you see the challenges with this policy of walk alone, and how do you think India is going to deal with that?
Thank you, Shalini. At the outset, I would like to compliment my co-authors for an exceptional book, and reading it also I learned a great deal myself. And of course, Mr. Nair for his vision to bring us together and to bring out this book. We have had the benefit of several consultations with different people, including the CDS, who was very free and frank and gave us a lot of time and talked about it, that clarified some doubts and also allowed us to convey some of our concerns. Now, as far as Pakistan is concerned, the terrorism in Pakistan is sustained by 3 A's: Army, Allah and America, which is further sustained by their artificial god in China. So whatever happened during this, and we know that it's for 4 decades that we have been suffering from terrorism. We know that Pakistan is not going to change, and you are a real expert on Pakistan. Therefore, it is important that we need to find a way out. How are we going to respond to it? We have done different tricks and trade. And as Nathan was saying, that we must get out of Sindoor. Indeed, we should. But what was Operation Sindoor? It is a doctrinal shift in India's response mechanism. And it completely sealed the fate of any kind of a doubt in anybody's mind that India will not respond. And we should respond. In my view, we should not have even given 15 days to Pakistan. But at the same time, yes, we know that all these countries in the world, they teach you all kinds of things. But as far as terrorism is concerned, there is tremendous hypocrisy. There are double standards. They believe in my terrorist versus your terrorist. There is not even a single definition of terrorist or terrorism which has been accepted in the United Nations. Prime Minister Modi has been talking about it at the UN. So what remains for you? You are suffering from it, and that's why I say Ekla Chalo Re. By doing what we did, and of course diplomacy is very, very important, so is strategic communication to the people. We should have started doing much earlier. But at the same time, it says that we are not seeking any approval from anyone, nor are we seeking any validation, because this is our core security interest, and we are not going to let it be compromised. That's what it communicated. I have also suggested, like everybody else, that we need to have a strategic communication mechanism, which should be proactive, a 24/7. We need not be in a reactive mode. Unfortunately, that has been the case, and we all have talked about it so many times. Secondly, we should also be prepared for the worst, because we are not looking at this information warfare or grey zone warfare only with Pakistan. And as you have rightly mentioned yourself, it's kind of a subset. It was a Sino-Pak axis that has tremendous capacity for the grey zone warfare. And that is something that works all the time, in which it is important that we should formalize military diplomacy. And that's what I have tried to do.
Sir, I just taking from what you said about communication strategy, I'm just very tempted to ask the question on narratives. There was ample discussion and debate on the issue of India losing the narrative war. The book also talks about it. Despite doing militarily so well, our military dominance, discussion was all around that we lost the narrative war. Obviously, there are lessons to be learned. But what I am curious to know from you is that effectively, what are the complexities that India faced at the global level with this loss of narrative?
See, there are two things I would like to say. One is that we have generally been believing that whatever is right will be perceived as right by everybody else. But that's not the real world. There are interests, there are strategies, and nearly every country in the world, major power in the world, does not like an India which is strong, which is independent in its approach, and is ready to call out through its strategic autonomy. Nobody likes it. They would like to undermine everything. So therefore, it is important to tell them. So we have to do double efforts because there are lobbies that are working against us all the time, which I think we have not done successfully. You imagine the Pakistanis employed this lobbyist who was a bodybuilder of Trump way before Trump even took the oath. And therefore, what happened after this war, we have seen that Pakistan has endeared itself to the Americans a great deal, and that's a big challenge for us today. Everywhere they are supposed to be, from Gaza down to wherever you talk about, Pakistan is being invited to talk. So that is something that out of the blue, they encash this internationally. So we need to, now there is a greater, I think, challenge for us, how to counter that particular influence that Pakistan has garnered. In the Middle East, we had very successfully, through our West Asia policy, had really cut down on Pakistan factor a great deal. But it's back in action again. They have signed with Pakistan, Saudi, Turkey now, that kind of security agreement. And that's a challenge. So they have been really revived and survived. I always say that somehow we need to understand very carefully that Pakistan has this uncanny ability to encash its nuisance value with every superpower.
Thank you, sir. In fact, Pakistan started working with Trump since January when they started talking about critical minerals in Balochistan, and one would wonder if Balochistan had critical minerals, what were the Chinese doing for so many years, and they never figured out critical minerals in Pakistan. Thank you, sir. Coming to you, sir, Yamansh Rajesh Kumar. Sir, you have given a very comprehensive narration of Indian Air Force, the true scale and precision that defined the operation. Spectacular planning, execution, selection of targets, choice of weapons. You have discussed everything there, you know. Some multiple aspects have been discussed. IAF targeting Pakistan's airfield, hitting Noor Khan, potentially their command and control. What, in your view, was the turning point in the whole operation, which actually changed the dynamics for Pakistan and got them desperate for the ceasefire?
So, thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Shalini, and thank you to all my co-authors as well as Mr. Nair, the publisher.